Our second reading comes from Luke 10, 1 through 11, and 16 through 20. After this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them on ahead of him in pairs to every town and places where he himself intended to go. He said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go on your way. See, I am sending you out like lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no purse, no bag, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Whatever house you enter, first say, 'Peace to this house.' And if anyone is there who shares in peace, your peace will rest on that person. But if not, it will return to you. Remain in the same house, eating and drinking whatever they provide, for the laborer deserves to be paid. Do not move about from house to house. Whenever you enter a town and its people welcome you, eat what is set before you. Cure the sick who are there and say to them, 'The kingdom of God has come near to you.' But whenever you enter a town and they do not welcome you, go out into the streets and say, 'Even the dust of your town that clings to our feet, we wipe off in protest against you.' You know this, the kingdom of God has come near. Whoever listens to you listens to me, and whoever rejects you rejects me, and whoever rejects me rejects the one who sent me." The 70 returned with joy, saying, "Lord, in your name even the demons submit to us." He said to them, "I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning. See, I have given you authority to tread on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice at this, that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." So when I look at these passages, what I see is almost two sides here of a recognition that there is work to be done and joy to be taken in that work, but also a caution in how we are to engage that work and how we are to look at our achievements. Because too often it is easy to mistake our desires for God's work, or to frame our desires as God's work. So often we are pulled in different directions, and we have to use discernment in deciding what the right thing to do is and what of that is called to us by God. Because one of the hard parts of growing up from childhood to adulthood is realizing that there are many wonderful things we can do with our lives, but some of those just aren't our call. That we can live somebody else's life and do good, but not have that fulfilling recognition that we have lived our lives and our call. How many people have followed in the footsteps of a parent that had the life of the child planned out for them? Good works might have been done, but it might have not been the right good works. So discerning, what is my path? What is God calling me to be? Is often difficult in a world that is so full of choices. And now we add all the bad choices that we're also called to, called not by God, but by our own, mess, our own, rethers. I'm a workaholic. I'm a recovering workaholic. But there's a part of me that honestly answers when someone says, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, if I could figure out how to make beach bum pay, I could see that as being, a good thing. Okay, that's not my call. I know that. That's another part of me saying, what about that? It's hard to sort through options. So that's one danger. And then the other danger is the danger of, as we follow our call, to then get arrogant about it. And I think this is that reference to Satan. Because the sin of Satan that ends up being the paradigm for all sin is the sin of arrogance. Satan, in his place as number 2 in the universe, took too much pride in himself, too much pride in his actions. And in that arrogance, in that pride, produced so much destruction. So when these disciples come back, again, we're in Luke, so every time you see disciples, it's probably Jesus saying, yeah, not quite like that. You're just a little bit off base. They come back in pride. Look at what we have done. Even the demons are submitting to us. And Jesus is like, don't go down that path. This is a path that causes you to lift yourself up into an improper place, and destruction follows. That's not to say that we shouldn't do work and we shouldn't achieve and we shouldn't, try to live into our best selves. That's part of what we're called to be, is a better version of ourselves. But as soon as we pair that with, look at what I've done, all sorts of problems start creeping in. And I think that's true of every phase of human existence, whether we are talking about as individuals. Arrogance creates problems. Arrogance closes doors. It is hard to partner with someone who is arrogant. And so even in the process of doing good, the arrogant disrupt the work, and the harvest is not brought in. It's not brought in the way it could have been. It's true in our families. How often does arrogance disrupt family life? It's true of our communities. It's true of our nations. There's just this pattern that Satan laid down disrupts us, the best of us. And so, given the fact that when I look around the room, for most of us, not all of us, there are more days behind us than ahead of us. What are we to do with these lives that we have been given? Because it's easy to be distracted from the work or to set aside the work. As Bruce Springsteen once said, we tend to spend our middle age and forward living on those glory days. It's wonderful to remember. It's wonderful to honor. But if we stay stuck there, we harm our ability to gather the harvest. We undermine our ability to live forward in time the way that that we see with children. We can't stop them, even if they're at that perfect age that we love the most. Because I think most of us have that idea of what the perfect age of a child is. Oh, I wish I could be like this forever. Kids live forward in time, and we know that. But at some point in our lives, it's like we forget that. And we either just stay in the distracted present instead of the intentional present, or we fall back on those glory days. So the question is, how do we honor our heritage and our history? Remember those best memories, recapture the hope and possibility of our youth while we continue our journey forward as we intentionally take up our call. And again, that's as individuals, that's as family members, that's as communities, that's as a nation. We have done great things, and we have great memories that we need to honor. We've also got problems we need to overcome. So much of the back half of our lives, I think, is trying to figure out how to deal with what we did in the first half of our lives. Many of our health problems are a direct result of what we did last week, last month, last decade. Right? Here we are in the moment. How do we take this moment forward? So again, there's a temptation to either live in the past or to ignore it. There's a temptation to forget that we live forward in time, hopefully drawing from our past as we attempt to live into our possibilities, while also acknowledging and repairing those mistakes. And again, I think that as we get older, there's a temptation to try to live in the best parts of our past while trying to hide or ignore the worst. And that hampers our ability to grow and to heal. So the only way that we can live into our call, into our best selves as individuals, into our best selves as community members, and into our best selves as a nation among nations, is for us to live forward in time, to honor what is the best of us while understanding we still have work to do. The ancient philosopher Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living, but we tend to avoid examining our lives. And because of that, we miss our gifts. You know, one of the things that is amazing is to watch people discover their gifts. And it's easy to see in little ones because they're discovering the world. I mean, from the moment they discover that they have fingers and toes to the moment they discover that they can sing or paint or whatever it is, there's joy in watching those discoveries. I believe that we've got gifts undiscovered. As long as we have breath, there are discoveries to be made about ourselves, to be made about our communities and as our nation. We have the opportunity to examine ourselves, to examine our lives, to listen to our call, and to find ways to live into it so that we honor ourselves, our God, and our shared community. One of the things that we tend to do, though, is as we interact with others, we tend to either demonize or idolize. And both of those are problems. We tend to turn some people into demons out to get us. And, we tend to have a positive tone on idolizing, but listen to that word. It is making an idol out of someone. And that's a problem, because both of them block our ability to see the reality before us. And I think that most of us at one time or another have been either demonized or idolized. And doesn't that warp the interaction we have with that person? Because even if they're idolizing us, I was a teacher, and there's always those couple of ones that hate you, and those couple that love you. And with those 4 kids in every class, I was like, all 4 of you are off base here. I can't be as bad as you think I am. And I sure know that I'm not as good as you think I am. It warps that relationship. Whether you're the one doing the demonizing or the idolizing, or you're on the receiving end, because it's not real. We need to dig down and examine so we can hear our call and understand our call and live into our call. When we turn our leaders, our community members, our family members, because there's often a family member that ends up being the scapegoat or the golden child, and that's usually not healthy either, right? It sets up all sorts of family dynamic problems. But when we demonize or idolize, we lose a sense of the complexities of relationships and the complexities of our interactions, the complexities of reality. So one of the questions we now face is, how do we honor who we are at every level of existence, and also recognize what work needs to be done? And there's a need for us to combine humility and hope, and that's the alternate of what happened with Satan. With Satan, it was hope plus arrogance, hope plus unwarranted pride. But when we look at Micah 6:8, when we look at the entire ministry of Jesus, we saw hope paired with love and humility. And boy, that's how we build relationships, and that's how we grow. There's a Serbian proverb that says, "Be humble, for you are made of earth. But be noble, for you are made of stars." We are co-creators with God, endowed with reason and emotion and action, head, heart, mind, spirit, soul. What are we going to do with that? Because that is truly amazing. We are called, and we are here to love and to care, to heal and to grow, to step into our call and be co-creators with God. That's what it means to be made in God's image. We carry within us those facets of God. God is love. Don't we have love in us? God has nobility, creativity, compassion. These pieces are in us too. If we focus on those, if we discern those and live into those, to step into our call, whatever our call might be, guided by Jesus' call that we are to love as he loved. And that is how we are to live meaningful lives. There's a Rabbi Zushna, and as he was on his deathbed, his students found him and he was weeping. And this rabbi is a guy that was honored by all, was idolized by all. And so they tried to comfort him. And they said, Rabbi, you are almost as wise as Moses. And you are almost as kind as Abraham. Why are you weeping? And he replied, when I get to heaven, I will not be asked, why weren't you like Moses? Or why weren't you like Abraham? What I'm going to be asked is, why weren't you like Zushna? Why did you not become what you were born to be? And I think that's the question at every level of our existence that we need to be asking ourselves. Why am I not being me? The way that I was intended to be. All of those possibilities that we can't help but see in those little ones. Life distracts us, and life beats us up, but we have the ability to become what we are born to be. And can't we look at our families and say, boy, here are the elements where we're just falling short of what our family could be. Why don't we live into that? In love and hope, in healing, in compassion, in love. And what about our community? Can't our community be better than our community is? Why isn't Augusta living into Augusta? And our nation, boy, we have got so many problems and so much beauty. And each one should give us a sense that there is work to be done, to heal, to be what we were born to be, in love and hope and compassion. And so, finally, and this is what I do at 3 a.m., by the way, is I sit there and think about Bruce Springsteen and, rabbis and, Babylon 5 and Mary Oliver and others. Mary Oliver asked in one of her poems, tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It's a good question. And this question is also important for all phases of our lives, because as individuals and communities and families and nations, this is a wild and precious life, and we only have so much time. The work is immense, and the laborers are few. How are we going to live into that? And hopefully, Peter Singer notes that when we see somebody else doing the work, we're more likely to join them. Because when it seems like nobody's doing it, it becomes difficult to motivate ourselves because the job seems too big. But just because the job is too big for us as individuals does not mean it's too big for God and God's people. Drop by drop, the bucket is filled. I pray that we add those gifts, that we put drops in the bucket that will one day be filled, that we can look and say, this is who we are. This is who I was meant to be. And I lived into that.